Huddle up, everyone. It's time to talk because it looks like some of you have forgotten the iron law of politics, and that is, from Carl Schmitt, everything boils down to friend and enemy. And that is not just about having expedient co-belligerence on one given political issue. For example, the coalition with the TERFs, the trans-exclusionary radical feminists, and the traditional Catholics about the trans issue, which then breaks apart over immigration. No, instead, it's about who has a commensurate vision of the good life with yours, and who presents an existential threat to that way of life. And in this instance, this can broadly boil down to the Islamo-communist coalition versus the British patriots and some of the dispossessed liberals who just think they've taken things too far. And the best example of this in the last week was Christian Calgie, who is the reporter over the Daily Express, having a set to with Zarah Sultana, the former Labour Party MP who is now an independent, and was on the precipice of helping lead Jeremy Corbyn's Your Party, the Jezbollah alliance of ex-Labour MPs and Gaza independent candidates, who now fell out with that party because she said it's a old boys club. I'm not sure what she expected from an Islamic party. I've got some hadiths that she might need to read. Well, she had an argument with Calgie, and Calgie apologised, and she didn't accept his apology. And this is instructive as to why you should never cede ground to your existential enemy. There's a difference between disagreeing in good faith and causing offence to someone acting in that good faith and then retracting or apologising, and someone who will see your apology as a neck bared weakly to sink their teeth into. And Zarah Sultana falls into the second category. So Calgie had tweeted in response to this controversy about Birmingham football match not allowing Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from Israel to come over and watch the match for their home team. He tweeted, "Cannot wait until my taxes no longer fund Zara's salary." And then someone else had written, "Cannot wait until my taxes fund deporting Zara's." And he said, "Even better." This is exactly correct. Zarah Sultana wants to turn my country into basically Mogadishu, like a communist Islamic slum. And considering there are an abundance of those third world shitholes currently in existence, I would rather she relocate or be swiftly remigrated to somewhere that better fits her values rather than trying to revolutionize and terraform my country into the failed state of her ancestors. She's Pakistani, by the way. And she wrote, "A mainstream journalist calling for a British MP to be deported. Is it because I'm Muslim? Next time just say it with your chest." Okay, yes. Yes, it is. Islam does not belong in Britain. Your religion did not build my country. It cannot reproduce my country. Instead, what it reliably produces are Pakistani rape gangs, an abundance of terror attacks, honour killings, beheadings for apostasy, female genital mutilations, child and cousin marriage, sibling marriage in many cases, Sharia courts. Take your pick of all of the atrocities that have been imported to my country which we never needed to have. Even the peaceful, law-abiding Muslims, if they do not read the Quran too closely, will not practice a culture which reproduces Christian England. And so, yes, Islam and its practitioners do not belong in this country. And you, a particularly hostile, vengeful Islamo-communist, especially don't belong here. So yes, either you leave or you should be deported because of this, Zarah. And I am not afraid of saying so. She says, "They'll tell you fascism in this country is a working class phenomenon. It's a lie. It's not fascism to say that we shouldn't have to live alongside people who hate us and want to launch somewhere between a Marxist and an Islamic revolution against our country, despite their variable contradictions." She says, "It's the ruling class and their snivelling lackeys like Christian here who want us divided. Don't let them win." Yet again, baked into her premise is the idea that we're all blank slates deep down, and it's only the filthy capitalists, the media moguls, and the millionaires and the billionaires that are causing division by noticing differences. And if we just stopped noticing differences, then everyone would realise that they're being exploited by these wealthy titans of industry, and they would impose wealth taxes in a Fabian setting, or perhaps opt for a more violent revolution as advocated by Marx and Engels, seize the means of production, take all the wealth for themselves, and we would have an egalitarian communist utopia, and all hold hands and sing John Lennon's Imagine, presumably in Arabic. So Bridget Phillipson, despite being in a different party from Zarah Sultana in her former party, the Labour Party, despite being in cabinet as the education minister, herself being a committed Marxist, quote tweeted Zarah Sultana and said, "Calling for a British Muslim woman to be deported is appalling and unacceptable. Shame on you, Christian Calgie. No such thing as a British Muslim woman. Being Muslim is incommensurate to being British. You're neither ethnically British, nor do you share the culture and religion of this nation. And that is the prerequisite to assimilation. I mean, based on the biblical model, the character of Ruth says, "Your people is my people, your God is my God." And she fully submits as an incorporated member of the tribe to the God and therefore the laws of Israel, and her children are Jews because she marries and has children with a Jew. So none of that bar for assimilation or integration is met by revolutionary communist Muslim Pakistani woman Zarah Sultana. And yet Bridget Phillipson is going to bat for her. She says, "You should apologise now, this only serves to inflame division and intolerance." Yet again, the premise is, if you notice differences between, for example, Muslims and Pakistanis and Christians and the English or indigenous Brits, you are causing the division. Otherwise, we would all be in the original organic state of equality where everyone is indistinguishable. And I responded to this by saying, I am in fact divided and intolerant of Zarah Sultana's demented Muslim race communism. There is no universe in which I, a Christian Englishman, am unified with that. If Sultana wants to turn my home into an Islamic communist failed state, she should be sent packing to one instead. Perfectly reasonable demand, hence the ratio. And so Calgie, probably at the request of an executive at the Express in order to keep his job, apologised. He issued the public apology by saying, "I wish to apologise to Zarah Sultana MP for my inappropriate response to a message on X. It was wrong of me to do so and I am sorry. Taking a break from X to prioritise my mental health." The figurative gun held to the hostage is, of course, off screen. And I responded, and the reason I'm making this segment and reading my tweet out is because of the outsized public support for my tweet over Christian's apology. No need. She will not afford you the same grace. Sultana is a vindictive race communist who would turn our green and pleasant land into an Islamic slum if given the power. Requesting she relocate to a place that already practices her odious politics is the moderate position. The point being, if someone does not share your existential vision of the good, if they don't share all of the moral priors that feed into what kind of country you want to live in, then you will not be given any grace by them. Your apology will just be taken as an excuse to exploit you. And no finer values distinction here exists than between the Christianity that's been fed into England, which was a Christendom long before it was even a United Kingdom. Alfred the Great, the first king of England, properly translated the Bible into Anglo-Saxon English. He wrote the Doom Book with the Ten Commandments as the preface and wrote 120-odd laws, each one for a year of the life of Moses, and that predated England being a unified kingdom under his descendant Athelstan. And so Christianity has been inextricably fed into the moral substrate, into the culture of England. It's formed its family formation, it prevented cousin marriage, unlike in Pakistan. So that nuclearized family unit created the individualistic morality that we practice as a second nature today. And the other origin source for our individualistic morality, for thinking that we should feel guilty for wrongdoing and make restitution to the people that we have wronged, and that the people who have been wronged should forgive those who repent and go and sin no more, all comes from the idea in Christianity that each of us is in possession of a spark of divinity, having been made imago Dei in the image of God, and therefore we are each moral agents that owes one another moral consideration regardless of familial origin, race, ethnicity, etc. This is not common across other cultures, other faiths, especially in Islam, which practices asabaya, which is clannish, collectivist morality that says moral consideration should only be extended to yourself, your family, your clan, and the ummah, the global Muslim race. And this is the same principle in communism, which says morality resides in classes. So morality is determined by your possession of material resources, because in historical materialism, there is no value judgment outside of material possessions. And so the working classes, the proletariat, are in possession of less material resources than the bourgeoisie, the industrial, greedy capitalist class, who have created inequality by taking from the original fixed pie of wealth a disproportionate share. Rousseau believed that by recognizing private property, you create inequality rather than just privation being the natural state of man. And so, because the proletariat are the oppressed class and the bourgeoisie are the oppressor, the proletariat can do no wrong in revenging themselves against the bourgeoisie. So collectively, the proletariat are morally pure and the bourgeoisie are, in Engels' words, a vampire holding property class that must be laid aside like an old coat. And this necessitates a revolution so bloody it makes the French Revolution look like child's play. And that was a phrase that both Marx and Engels used repeatedly. They wanted revolution by means of bayonet and cannon. They wanted authoritarianism. You can read this in all their texts. And they said that no matter what the proletariat did, or in Lenin's case, their Bolshevik vanguard, including murdering the children and wife of the Tsar, who otherwise seemed to have been a pretty decent man for Russia at the time, no matter what horrors they visited on their alleged oppressors, they are impune from being judged because they are, by merit of being proletariat, disadvantaged and oppressed. And so if you strike out against an oppressor, you've committed no wrongdoing. And this communist mentality fed into the third worldist doctrine that was preached by Nikita Khrushchev in 1961, but then was amplified by Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth and Jean-Paul Sartre's introduction to it, which said that if a oppressed colonized person kills their colonizer, they actually kill two people. They kill the false consciousness that they have imbibed by living under colonial rule, and they've killed their vindictive colonial oppressor, and they've done something good by doing that. And this is exactly the doctrine that Zarah Sultana celebrates when she becomes a devotee of Free Palestine. She shows solidarity with the Ummah, her global Muslim race. She believes in communist wars for third world liberation because she believes that everyone is fundamentally equal, and if you just level the playing field by taking and redistributing all wealth, then we would have peace until history itself ends and the sun devours the earth. She believes in collective morality, and so it is completely pointless apologizing to members of the left because they share none of your moral foundations. They do not want to recreate the same civilization that you seek to sustain, and they will take your generosity and your contrition as a sign of weakness to crush you. And the perfect example of this was her response to his apology. She said, "Inappropriate. I think the word you're looking for is racist. Ah, she has cast the magic spell, and therefore we must throw away our civilization. If you're going to apologise, don't do it mealy-mouthed. Go and educate yourself, aka agree with all of my ideological priors to advance my revolution. And your employer, the Daily Express, could start by actually apologising and providing you with some anti-racism training. So, your apology is not enough. You need to be brainwashed by the racial grievance grift industry that I want to take your money via taxes to redistribute to. Never apologise to people who want to destroy your country via communist revolution or the construction of an Islamic caliphate." And she continued to press on this, because Calgie said, "Just a quick message of enormous thanks to everyone who's been in touch over the past few days offering support, from government to opposition, all parties and none, all corners of the media. It was immensely kind and nearly as overwhelming as the pile-on back soon," which implies that someone from the government actually reached out and said, "Yeah, Zarah Sultana's a nutter, don't pay any attention to her." She wrote, "There's no solidarity quite like that between client journalists, politicians and their billionaire backers. It's all one big club. Very rich, coming from someone who is in the same sphere as The Guardian, Novara Media, Politics Joe, and the various tendrils of George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Like, you are entirely a creature of ethno-nepotistic promotion within the Labour Party and amplification by an international network of very well-funded leftist activists." And Charlotte Gill has done an excellent job documenting all of this for everyone in the Green Party and Jeremy Corbyn and Labour, of how they're some incestuous network of pro-green, eco-communist Islamic activist groups. She writes, "This so-called journalist called for me, a British MP, to be deported because I'm Muslim. You're not British, and yes, Islam doesn't belong in Britain. Yet somehow he's the victim. Cry me a river. Our media and political class are rotten to the core. We're not going to take this anymore." It's ironic, because at the same time Sultana says we're not going to take this anymore, I noted that Mikard Versi, who is on the Muslim Council of Britain, is worried about the level of Islam fatigue that is set in among the general population. I think it's 53% in a survey a couple of months ago said that being Muslim is incompatible with British values, I would say traditions. And this recognition being picked up on by conservative politicians like Robert Jenrick, Claire Coutinho, and Nick Timothy. And he is saying the Tories' narrative on Islam and British Muslims today is scary. And my response to him was saying, making excuses for Islam is going to become an electoral liability, because the general public have a very low opinion of Islam. And the reason is, I mean, the aesthetic crimes like the burqa being hideous and various gibberish adverts on the tube that just make their country feel like the Star Wars cantina, but also, you know, the Pakistani rape gangs, the number of terror attacks, the number of violent crimes and sexual assaults committed by men from broadly Muslim-majority countries, the Islamic Hawala finance system that is funding the other vector of mass demographic replacement, which is the illegal migrant boat trade coming over from the Channel from, again, Muslim-majority countries. Like, take your pick. All of these things are undesirable. All of them are optional. They're all foreign imports. They're all sourced in Islamic scripture. Look at the Hijra, or that which the right hand possesses for any justifications for these appalling crimes. People are increasingly aware of it because of the internet. This is why an increasing number of people are leaving Islam as well, because they're becoming aware of it because of the internet. See David Wood's recent video. And so, the British public are sick to the back teeth of it, and if it comes down to being called racist versus having a country, I'm sorry, we can probably survive the slander of being called racist to keep our country from turning into a caliphate, thank you very much. And he replied to this with saying, "It is good that people are being open about their prejudice. Islam doesn't belong in Britain. Can't see what this means other than British Muslims don't belong in Britain. Disgusting. No such thing as a British Muslim." And I responded, "You're correct. Your religion didn't build Britain. It doesn't belong here. Islam produces cousin marriage, jihadist violence, Pakistani rape gangs, slavery, and Sharia law. These abhorrent acts are approved and advocated in the Quran and Hadiths. Islam will spell the end of Christian England. I don't want that, thanks. The British public never voted for mass migration. We do not want to live in a Muslim country. I'm not ashamed of saying that. If you want to live in a Muslim country, move to one." I got comparable engagement from Zarah Sultana. I wasn't press-ganged into getting sacked by a major newspaper. I'm sorry if Christian Calgie was, and that was the reason he apologised. But it turns out that if you just stick by your principles, and you just restate what you truly believe under pressure, then there aren't the consequences that you fear. Like, there are no worse consequences you could face for saying obviously true things about the state of your country than losing your country. So just say the things. Be courageous about it. And this then instigated a bunch of other people as well, after my reply blew up, to just bury him by saying, Carl here says, that is what that means. I responded, of course, with the crying Wojak and the yes Chad, because it's funny how statements by your enemies can code switch into different meanings depending on the political persuasion of the person who's reading and interpreting them. Now let's cross the pond for another example as to why you shouldn't apologise to your enemies, with this Politico hit piece. Quote, "I love Hitler. Leaked messages expose young Republicans' racist chat." Now, the fact that they called it racist in the headline means you can disregard all the contents of the article, because these are the people that have called milk racist. These are the people that have called George Washington racist. These are the people that have called all white people racist. These are the people that have called imposing objective standards about the progression of time on African immigrants racist. So they think it's racist for you to have a preference for a functioning civilization, your history, your heritage, and your people. So you can disregard anything that they decree as racist from here on out. Don't fall for the trap of helping them to cancel your own side. And the quote that they put in the headline, again, discredits them as an outlet, because the quote in question was a young Republican joking, "Oh yeah, obviously I'm far right, I love Hitler so much." Like, yes, shock. Young men who have been persecuted by the ruling woke hegemony for having locker room banter and just being white, straight, male, and competitive form group chats of fraternal belonging and then make edgy jokes among themselves. Like, I've got a group chat with a load of the base British Zoomers. We have made scathing comments about one another's appearance and very edgy jokes about all sorts of things. And you know what? If it ever leaks somehow, I stand behind every bloody word I said, because it was either made in jest or it's a valid political point. And these are clearly jokes. So, the not very sensible thing is to jump on the grenade that the left has pulled the pin on and blow yourself up by participating in their disingenuous cancellation exercise against a bunch of young Republicans who are just pissing about in a group chat, are not holding elected office, and are not making sincere threats of violence. This, by the way, was allegedly leaked by a rather resentful member of the chat called Gavin Wax. Gavin Wax works for the Trump administration currently. I think he's a staffer for Darren Beattie. And senior White House officials, as well as texts procured, sent from Wax, show that he leaked the contents of these group chats to Politico's reporter Jason Beeferman before the article was released. He denied leaking the messages. However, as has been reported, text messages show that Wax's correspondence with the journalist from September 2025, where he sought to actually throw his fellow young Republicans under the bus. It says, good, graphics team accepted the story as a project, so there will be a visual aspect too, like recreations of the chat. Oh, so you mean like this. So it seems that Gavin Wax was the person who wanted to destroy the reputation of his fellow young Republicans, probably either out of a personal slight or in order to get ahead and cut off the competition in the chat, or perhaps his Jewish identity caused him to be a bit sensitive about jokes about World War II. And to be clear, these seem to be jokes. So he has attempted to ruin the lives and reputations of his fellow young Republicans with the assistance of leftists for absolutely nothing. And now he's resigned from the New York Young Republicans. And the actual group has now disbanded after the group chat has leaked. And the only reason it has disbanded is because its erstwhile allies did not come to its defense stoutly enough. There was this exchange on the new Daily Wire show Crossfire between Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro, and Andrew Klavan. All men, by the way, who have put out work that I respect. I'm a listener to Knowles and Walsh's podcast. Ben, I think I disagree with on various aspects of foreign policy and immigration and perhaps even some economic stuff because he was a doctrinaire liberal free marketeer around the sort of 2016, 2017 years that I was getting into politics. And Andrew Klavan, I think I've clashed with on Twitter before because he said that Europe dwindled to nothing because lots of the Jews left for Israel because of the persecution by the Nazis during the Holocaust and, of course, Stalin's pogroms in Soviet Russia. I don't think that Europe is only good or the sort of zenith of civilization because it had lots of Jews in it and was friendly to Jews, Andrew. And I say this having Jewish friends who are very loyal to Britain remaining a majority British, ethnically, country and seeing its religion, Christianity, and its culture prosper. So, not hostile to Jews in the abstract, but I don't like liberal Jews pushing mass migration because they see themselves as immigrants and therefore indistinguishable from Muslims who would do me and them harm. But yeah, I don't think Europe is only good because of Jewish migrants settling in Europe. Anyway, this particular exchange showed that Matt Walsh was arguing you should not ally with the left in order to cancel people on the right because they've made statements that you don't like, even if this includes figures that Walsh and Shapiro both find odious, like Nick Fuentes, for example. Like, Walsh is not keen on lumping his lot in with BuzzFeed or the Washington Post or Politico to try and cancel people on his right that he disagrees with on certain issues. Whereas, I don't think Shapiro is going to be running to Politico anytime soon, but he saw the denunciation of this group chat as legitimate. He saw singing with the left's hymn sheet as legitimate in this instance to stop young Republicans from getting a bit too anti-Semitic or critical of Israel for his liking. And I think that that is a short-sighted strategy if you want to maintain a winning political coalition and cultivate excellent young talent, but also if you do actually want to decrease hostility towards Jews in Israel, the worst thing you could do is look like that is the lone third rail that is a cancelable offence for people just making jokes about the Second World War, rather than, being like Zarah Sultana, calling for Hamas to basically exterminate all Jews living in the region. So, if you are actually concerned about anti-Jewish sentiment, not just anti-Israeli sentiment, because it's perfectly fine to have criticisms of the state of Israel, if Israel ever comes into conflicts of interest with my country, then of course I'm choosing my country every time. Same should be true of America. But if you are actually concerned about people having undue bigotries and spurging out about Jews and engaging in actual Hitler revisionism, which people like Myron Gaines and other conspicuously brown people have in America in politics, then the worst thing you could do is say, well, you can't even talk about this subject, let alone joke about it, because we will ruin your life for it, and we will actually team up with your political enemies who have excused all sorts of things like mass replacement migration, the Pakistani grooming gangs, and transing kids. We will team up with those guys in order to do so. Because then it just looks like you're vindictive and an untrustworthy ally. And the people who were collectively losing their mind about this were rampant hypocrites. So Polymath said, here's the thing, and I genuinely need conservatives to listen when I say this, when you protect coddled little idiots who joke about Hitler, you are putting people like Iryana Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee who was murdered by DeCollis Brown Jr. in North Carolina on camera, in more danger. Now, Captive Dreamer, excellent account, pointed out that this guy has also joked about Hitler in the past, and he himself is ethnically Jewish, so this might be a sensitivity to him that he is being hypocritical about. Again, if you want to reduce anti-Jewish sentiment, I wouldn't advise teaming up with the worst people in politics and the mainstream media in order to ruin the lives of a few young white guys who make some edgy jokes. Edgy jokes should be totally acceptable, especially when the other side are engaging in actual political violence and creating the conditions for rampant lethal criminality, as happened in North Carolina with DeCarlos Brown Jr., let out despite multiple arrests to then go and murder the innocent Iryana Zarutska. Another example of this, Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee. Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee is one of these people that keeps calling everyone woke right, and the term didn't really seem to have any meaning, as I wrote about in There Is No Woke Right, my piece for The Critic, until it sort of anchored around being anti-Israel or spurging out about Jews all the time. Something which, I personally don't do, but that also doesn't make you woke, because the defining feature of wokeness is not a hatred of Jewish people, because the Nazis weren't woke, despite what James Lindsay might argue. Instead, the defining features of woke are gay race communism, because even universal healthcare or socialized housing is an optional belief for the left these days, but if you don't think all white people are racist, and you don't think that the gains of the sexual revolution should be consolidated by sterilizing children if they wear a dress, then you are kicked out of the left. You are persona non grata, which is why, Shoe on Head has basically been chased out of the left at this point. And so, allying with these people in order to clamp down on people who make jokes about World War II, you are actually just conceding ground to your existential enemy and salami slicing off potential friends. So Seth Dillon had told everyone to call out bad actors on your side, and if you don't, you're effectively covering for them. And I don't buy the unity excuse, because everyone who makes it is busy attacking anyone with the courage to speak up, no consistency, no clarity, no commitment to the good, just pure tribalism. Tribalism on the lines of being the side that values honesty, forgiveness, and the dignity of each person as a moral agent despite their family, ethnicity, race, and etc., which the other side, embodied by Zarah Sultana and communists in America, do not have. Roaring Nationalist, a friend and an excellent account you should be following, said, "It's incredible that even now Seth Dillon and guys like him don't get it. You can punch right all you want, but the leftists will never thank you. They'll never accept you. When the time comes, they'll line you up against the wall with everyone else they hate." Seth Dillon responded, "Leftists will never thank you. You know who they might actually consider thanking? Everyone who welcomed the worst of the radical right into the mainstream, making it easy for them to crush us at the ballot box. I'm not the one who wants to give the left their greatest gift." And there is a valid point here in saying, don't allow your most rambunctious, least credible members of your coalition to lead the coalition. This is actually an argument that Ben Shapiro was making, which does make sense, in saying that it was a trans issue that lost Kamala Harris the presidential election, thanks to, large in part, the work by Matt Walsh and What is a Woman. But also Matt then rejoined it with, but they're doubling down with Zoran Mandami, the third world race communist in New York, and they're more than likely going to win, and it's because they keep their coalition together and don't denounce each other and fight like rats in a sack. And if you fight like rats in a sack with yesterday's liberals rearranging the furniture in their refugee camp, the right, because they feel icky about being on the same side as actual social conservatives or vitalistic young white guys for whom there is no taboo because the yoke of woke censorship has been so oppressive, they need to throw it off in jubilant, braggadocious, bro-ish fashion and just make jokes about the things that most offend you, then yeah, you're going to have some resentment there, and what's going to end up happening is you're going to fracture the coalition and then allow, in the final analysis, demented race communists and Islamists like Zoran Mandami to be the only player on the field. And this is best illustrated by the fact that he's arguing with Evan Loves Worf in the replies. Evan Loves Worf is one of the most inexplicably popular, insane leftists who will have the absolute worst take on everything. He's basically a giant communist lolcow on Twitter that the right milks for content. But he replied to Seth Dillon when Seth Dillon said, you know who they might consider thanking? The people that promote the craziest or most fringe members of the coalition. He said, "For the record, I do prefer you calling people like this out to not doing so, but the problem is the literal policies of the administration reflect the wishes of woke right. You are still voting alongside these people." And so the point is, your willingness to be principled, Seth, and say, hey, maybe on certain instances, some people are saying things that are going too far. I'm not saying whether or not I agree with your assessment of that. That will be taken again as weakness. Just like Christian Calgie's apology was taken as weakness by Zarah Sultana, it will be seized upon by your Islamist and communist enemies, and you will instead alienate your allies that want to defend your civilization and repudiate those people in the strongest terms, and give those people enough ground so that when the time comes and their revolution is successful, they will treat you with as little grace as someone like Nick Fuentes, who you see as totally beyond the pale and on the fringe of that sort of stuff. This is the correct response to this. This is Vice President Vance sharing a screenshot of Democrat Attorney General nominee Jay Jones for the Virginia AG race, and he had fantasized about shooting his GOP candidate rivals. Vance said, "This is far worse than anything said in a college group chat, and the guy who just said it could become the AG of Virginia. I refuse to join the pearl clutching when powerful people call for political violence." And then he reiterated it with saying, "A friend shared these truly disturbing messages from a young Republican chat. The group's leader genuinely calls for murdering the children of his political opponents." Oh wait, this is actually from Jay Jones, the Democrat running for Attorney General in Virginia, who has not been removed, by the way. Prominent Democrats are still taking photos with him and endorsing him. He is not beyond the realm of possibility to be the next Attorney General of Virginia, and he is calling to murder, much like the Bolsheviks did, the family of his political opponent. So, absolutely disgraceful. And so when you are engaging in cancellation on behalf of the hacks at Politico, or people like Evan Loves Wolf, you are engaging in political action that benefits this side, who are not just calling for violence and killing their political opponents, but are actually doing it. And this is why people began quote retweeting the Republican group chat messages with, "I don't care about another group chat leak," with photos of Charlie Kirk, or with photos of Yana Zarutska, or with photos of black criminals who have pled insanity to having killed white children for absolutely no reason other than they are white. Or with, of course, images of Austin Metcalf, who was killed, seemingly, by a black teen in yet another routine instance of black-on-white violence in America. Or with Audrey Hale, the Tennessee school shooter who killed a bunch of children and staff members because she hated white people, hated herself, and was struggling with her gender identity, undergoing a transition to appearing as male. Or with the autistic child who was kidnapped and brutally beaten by 4 black teenagers on camera in around 2017 and told to shout F Donald Trump and F white people. Or the Waukesha Parade murders, where the black supremacist rammed a car into a bunch of innocent people and killed children. And this is the take that we should take. It's Charlie Kirk's take from back in 2022, as reposted by Captive Dreamer. "The left has never played by our rules. Only we play by our rules. Our rules are what keeps our side from winning. We either want to win, or we will lose under some delusion that the rules mean anything. What this means is not to abandon your principles. It means to only extend your principles to your friends who agree with the moral foundations of your principles. For example, let's say we're playing a game of Monopoly. Let's say 3 out of the 4 players are playing by the rules. They're taking $200 or pounds, whatever you prefer, when you pass go. They are charging the appropriate amount on their properties if you land on them, and they've got all their cards facing up. Let's say there's a 4th player who's stealing from the bank. Would you keep playing Monopoly with that person, or would you flip the board over and exile them from the game? Because you cannot win if one person is cheating and exploiting your honesty and your generosity and your willingness to abide by the rules as a way of hamstringing you from political action that prevents their revolution. You can't win it. So, if, for example, communists and Islamists like Zarah Sultana say, "I don't believe in free speech because hate speech exists," okay, you don't believe in free speech, you don't get it. Sorry. If you don't believe in the inviolable dignity of the innocent human person per Christianity, yeah, you're not going to be extended the same considerations of the writ to habeas corpus that we extend to Christian Englishmen. You should be deported. We are not going to extend the same standards of cancellation to those who supported Charlie Kirk's murder, or at least excused it by referencing his apparently beyond the pale opinions, as we do to those who are on our side. It's just not going to happen, because one side will protect our civilization and play by its rules, and the other will, in a sort of Frank Herbert's Dune quote fashion, appeal to our principles when it is advantageous to them, and when they have power, they will then use power against us because that is their principle. They are practicing the politics of friend-enemy, and it's time the right found out. And Matt Walsh has been most consistent on this, as he was during the Charlie Kirk assassination aftermath. He had said, I'm going to lay down arms with all of those on the right because we are in an existential fight for survival right now. And he is quote tweeting here a video, and there are multiple videos, that came out of the tragically pathetic No Kings protests that happened last week. One video was of a Mexican schoolteacher with a Mexican flag living in America, mimicking Charlie Kirk getting shot in the neck. And this is someone else who is saying that Charlie Kirk was a piece of garbage, and I'm glad Hitler, Charlie Kirk, is dead. And Matt quoted this with saying, I will never forget the conservatives who lined up to denounce naughty jokes in a group chat while the left openly says stuff like this. The most pathetic and obtuse display I've ever seen from our side. And this prompted some outrage by many folks who found Matt Walsh's old article in Blaze Media saying, dear all white supremacists and leftist Antifa thugs, you deserve each other. And Lydia, Timple's old producer, said, wow, 2017 Matt Walsh would hate 2025 Matt Walsh. Pathetic. And Matt responded with this. 2017 Matt Walsh hadn't seen his friend get shot in the throat. 2017 Matt Walsh hadn't seen the left burn down cities across the country. 2017 Matt Walsh didn't yet have to move because deranged leftists were showing up outside his house while his children played outside. 2017 Matt Walsh hadn't experienced a lot of things that 2025 Matt Walsh has. People change over time. If you really haven't at all since 2017, then congratulations. Must be nice living in your bubble, oblivious to what's actually happening in the world. Now, I'm not going to go through the ritualistic denunciation of every figure that the hack establishment press designate to be far-right white supremacist and a racist. I know what I believe. I'm a Christian. I don't believe in arbitrary ethnic bigotry. I do believe in cultural discrimination, and I do think that we should close our borders to certain countries around the world and the cultures that are incompatible to them. And that seems to map onto a hell of a lot of ethnicities, unfortunately. But hey, maybe we can leave them alone for a few hundred years and see if they can figure it out on their own. However, I don't care what they call racist. I don't care what they call bigoted. Islamophobia was a term invented by the Muslim Brotherhood to act as a Trojan horse to allow Islam to enter our countries without any criticism. So I don't care what the people using these thought-stopping cliches and smears think is beyond the pale or bigoted. What I care about, instead, is protecting my civilization. And so, Matt Walsh is correct. Despite potential disagreements on the right about everything from reproductive technologies to foreign policy, we shouldn't be constantly infighting. Instead, we should be defending ourselves against our existential enemies, which are communists, Muslims, and the complacent liberals who act as their useful idiots, giving them cover while they wage a revolution to turn our country into either the Soviet Union or a failed third world slum. And so, the lesson here should be, never apologise to your enemies who are not going to extend you good grace. It is a matter of personal prudence based on political allegiance as to whether or not, if you get something wrong, you should apologise to this person. You should correct the record to ensure that you have public credibility if you're engaging in debates. But if someone on the other side is offended by what you say, consider whether or not they are a good faith actor or whether or not they're just trying to leverage your liberal or generous Christian standards to their advantage so that they can make you look weak and they can continue their revolution to destroy your civilization.